are.
Oh,
How are you?
sorry, that was the technical thing at my end.
Okay,
It,
so let's get into it. Oh my gosh, Ben, so good to have you here. Thank you so much for
hello,
joining us. Tell us
no
about
problem.
who you are, what do you do, and tell us about your kind of agency work.
Yeah, so hello everyone. My name's Ben Mottershead. I am the creative director and founder of Neverdoor Studio. We are a brand identity and animation studio based out of London. We kind of cover everything from brand strategy, which is basically coming up with the building blocks, to sort of branding, logo designs, marketing communications, from social media to digital advertisement marketing. And then we go to the other side of what we do, which is kind of animation and motion graphics and sorry, my dog's just gone mad. Animation and motion graphics, which is kind of like storyboarding, illustration, commercials, YouTube, TikTok, social media, etc. So we cover a whole sort of degree of different topics, different formats, but mainly focused on branding and animation.
Amazing. Okay. And like you said, kind of animation, branding, design, they're all kind of part of the same area. We did have a session yesterday on Tuesday all about animation. So lots of people watching probably won't be aware of how much, those kind of worlds are interlinked. So do you want to tell us a bit about,
Absolutely, yeah.
yeah, the skills, I guess, that are so transferable across all those different industries that you're kind of now covering?
Yeah, so I think when you break down design as an entity, you're essentially a professional problem solver. It's what you're hired to do. You can, besides the pictures you make and the designs you create from a conceptually or visually, ultimately what you're doing every day is trying to find the best solution to communicate an outcome to an audience. So whether it's through animation or digital design or graphic design or brand identity, there's a consistent thread there about communication. Now, obviously, the way you approach these different mediums is very different. You would never approach developing a brand identity as you would with animation, but the end goal is always the same. How can you engage someone as effectively as in make them as interested and overjoyed or passionate about what you're trying to show them? So there are a lot of similarities, and they all exist within the creative industries. My background, especially, I started off in branding in my career, and then I went into motion and animation design, then into digital design, then into so on and so on and so on. So you can kind of job hop very comfortably, and I think that's why the creative industries tends to attract people who are very versatile. They like to try different things out. They're not against trying new things and learning as much as possible. What I would say though, depending on what you like individually, it's always good to try and sort of start off where you mean to finish. If you really love animation, try and start in animation, but don't be worried if you start it and don't enjoy it. You can always go into something else.
I love that. Good lesson there already, guys. Don't put too much pressure on yourselves. Um, so Ben, let's delve a bit more into your career background because
Mhm.
also the way and the reason that you got into this industry is something that you feel like so passionately about kind of sharing with everyone else, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, the interesting thing for me is that when I was at school, I wasn't very academic, which probably would be no surprise. I was always a bit of a C student. My dad was a teacher, so I was very lucky in that sense. He was always able to help me more than maybe other people might get from their own parents. But I was always very C, borderline B student. Never really enjoyed the academic subjects like maths and science. But I was always very good at sport. I was good at art. I was good at media. But for most of my teenage years, I played a lot of competitive sport. I played basketball. I grew up skateboarding and snowboarding and mountain biking. I lived in the Lake District. So for most of my teenage years, right up until I got 19, I wanted to go into sports science. I wanted to be a physiotherapist or something like that, or go into coaching. And then my PE department in sixth form were horrendous, really put me off doing like sport as an actual subject. And my other sport that, no, my other subject I was quite good at was art. Didn't think you could make a career in art at the time. I didn't like, I didn't know that where I grew up, there wasn't this big like sign that you could make a career out of art. But my parents always instilled in me is you should follow what you enjoy. And for me, it was very much like I enjoyed art. I liked making, getting messy and making things and coming up with ideas. So that led me into kind of going into my foundation year at a local college. And obviously, for those who maybe aren't aware, foundation is usually like a bridging year between your sixth form or BTEC and then university. So I went there, and while I was on foundation, it was like, oh, do I do fine art? Do I do design? Which one do I specialize in? And my tutor at the time just said, you know, design's a lot more commercially driven. I think you do well there. It's definitely, if you're interested in a career, there's definitely a lot of like longevity in that. So I ended up going obviously to University of West of England in Bristol, did a degree. I would say you don't need to do a degree now. When I went to university, it was very much like you had to go to uni to get a job in the creative industries. You don't so much now. But I went there, had the best 3 years of my life, met I met my wife at university. All my friend group I currently have is from my days at university. I'm a very big advocate for university from a personal progression level. I don't think it's the be all and end all for an academic standpoint. I think there are easier ways if you just want to be in the creative industries, much easier ways to cheaper ways to get into it. But if you want to explore and learn about yourself and have a lot of fun, it's a brilliant place to go. And then, yeah, obviously I graduated from that and then just kind of got any job I could. Just went into the creative industries, went to a festival called DNAD, which stands for Design and Art Direction, held in London, which some of you might have come across before. And from that, I managed to get my first internship by pure sales. My portfolio was always pretty rubbish. I wasn't bad, but I don't think I had a very commercially driven portfolio, by which it was a lot of like weird projects. But the way I'd always describe the creative industries is it's very much it's what I call a sales and service industry. So sales comes first, and you have to learn how to sell yourself. It's why you meet a lot of extroverted people in the industry because you're kind of trained on how to sell yourself, sell your ideas, which I was always very good at. And from that, I got my first internship, then into my first junior position out in Hertfordshire in a graphic design and branding agency. Made redundant after 9 months. Then I went into motion animation because I was just like, Christ, what am I going to do with my life? Oh, motion looks fun. Let's go try that. As I said earlier, you're never shoehorned. And then did that for 4 years. Then left that job, went into a bit of a digital agency, quit that after about 9 months, and then went freelance and then into events and then finally into my own agency. So and I've only been in it for 11 years. So it's a lot to happen in like a 10-year period.
Yeah, but like you were saying, being flexible, keeping an open mind, don't box yourself in. Like this is kind of how you end up developing a career in your space. Like it's really multifaceted.
Yeah, and I think the best thing as well is if you've got a passion for certain things, such as like music or sport or dance or whatever, you can still engage in that within the industry. So a lot of like our clients, for instance, we work with a lot of arts and culture, we work with a lot of charities, etc. And I think there's a way if you're someone who's really into sport, there's loads of big brand like creative companies and creative agencies that just service the sports industry. So you could, even though like for someone like me who's really into sport, I could easily go and find work within the sports industry, but as a designer, so I can be around that the entire time. One of my friends was really into sport, went and worked at Limelight Sports, and then got a job at Nike in Amsterdam and worked there for like 5 years in the digital department, and then went on to other things. So there's definitely ways if you're someone that's like enjoys the art, like creative side of things, and still wants to be working music, you can do both at the same time, and you can get yourself into that area of music by servicing it through design.
Absolutely. And to your point earlier as well, you can make that part of your sales pitch.
Yeah.
Sales being such an integral skill, you are kind of pitching to clients all the time. You're trying to present yourself as someone that is the perfect person for them to work with. And so that can actually be incorporated into your whole personal brand in a way.
Yeah, and personal brand's important. I think, it's not like personal brand in the sense of what you see on TikTok with sort of like the influencers on there. I think it's more about understanding what you enjoy, what you're good at, how you can position that to make yourself more attractive to clients or job prospects or whatever. If you're not extroverted, you're more introverted. Listening is a really big skill, and it's a skill that's not really given as much value as it could. So if you're more of a listener than a talker, that's still a huge advantage, and that can mean you're more analytical, you're more precise, you're more like etc. etc. So I think it's really important that when it comes to personal brand, it's not just about how you look and how you act. It's also about your skills and knowing yourself and staying true to that and knowing how to kind of sell that into people.
Absolutely. And so, speaking of skills, what are your kind of recommendations for skills that young people should really be focusing on developing now? You've already mentioned sales, one of them,
Yeah.
like you say, like introspect as well, understanding more about who you are, what your like individual skills are. Tell us a bit more.
So obviously the obvious one is software, and obviously there is a need to know software. That's a granted. But the things you've got now with the rise of things like AI, generative art, automated systems, etc. Being good at software isn't really enough anymore. It's a dime a dozen. I can go train someone in 6 weeks how to use Photoshop, Illustrator, Adobe, and make them be able to churn out work. I think if you want to give yourself a bit more of a leapfrog than that, it's really getting into the understanding problems, understanding this, what we call like brand strategy or strategy, where you're kind of really building that foundation to a creative project. So really understanding the problem, understanding the people you're trying to communicate to. So when you're going entry level, and I teach at Hertfordshire University, and we teach a lot of this there, is it's not just about being good on the tools, it's also about being good how to communicate solutions to problems. I would always advise that everyone regularly engages with the media, with the global news, with actually like trade, like industry news. You're only as good as your understanding of the world. As designers, we design for people who live in the world, who a lot of the time they're not even paying attention to what we design, they're just glimpsing it. So the more you can understand why people react to certain things and what drives them and what makes them kind of sit up and pay attention, the more you can design better communication. And I think a lot of the time in the industry, we see people who are great at the doing, but they're not very good at the actual understanding of, like, we call it behavioral psychology. It's like, why is that making someone engage with something? So going into the industry, software is important. Understanding what motivates people is really important. Understanding how to sell yourself is really important. But also understanding that you're at the start of the journey. There doesn't need to be a lot of pressure. It's just about doing what you enjoy, doing what you find the most fun. And in doing that, you'll create really good work that will make you stand out. Because when we hire people, we hire for who they are, not necessarily what they can produce. Because we can train people how to be good at what they do, but we can't instill a sense of kind of dedication and gumption and what's the word, optimism. So I'd always encourage people to focus more on just those parts of themselves, and the rest will fall into itself.
Oh, I love that. That's some really good advice there, you know. In the last minute that we have, can
Mhm.
you recommend, because you did mention you keep an ear to the ground, not just in terms of world news and the
Yeah.
zeitgeist, but also what's happening in the industry. So what are your recommendations for places that people can go to learn more about what's happening in the design world?
Yeah, I think there's a few places. I mean, obviously you've got the media press, like It's Nice Start, Creative Boom. So Katie, who runs Creative Boom, is lovely, and she's just developed a whole new community on the platform Mighty. So anyone can access that. You can join the Creative Boom community, and it's full of designers and creators in all fields, from photography to film to everything. So you can join that for free and just engage with people. I think LinkedIn's great. I think, in terms of what in all fairness, I'm a big advocate for just talking to people. The biggest bit of feedback I'm getting at the moment is everyone's too behind their screens. They're too, and we're actually seeing that with a lot of new talent coming into the industry. Is everyone's a bit reserved and a bit worried about talking to people. So one thing you should absolutely improve on is your person-to-person skills. Get out and speak to people, but join communities, see what's going on, and learn as much as you can. Don't be afraid to ask questions, because there's no such thing as a stupid question. Because once you know the answer, you won't make it. You won't have to ask. You won't have to ask it again.
Absolutely love that. Remember, guys, no such thing as a stupid question on that topic. Make sure that you put your questions for Ben in the Q&A, and we will make sure that we will send them over to him afterwards for him to answer in a relaxed way. Thank you so much, Ben. That's all we've got
No
time for.
problem.
We've got to move on to Bron now, but I really appreciate you being here. See you
No
in
problem. Have a good day, guys. Bye.
Bye.